We're live. What's up, y'all? It's been a while. I've had a couple of things pop up in my world. We're going to discuss a little bit of that, explain what the philosophy of the show is going forward. As you can see, it's Blerding While Dad. I'll kind of explain a little bit of my philosophy behind the branding and what this is going to look like moving forward. I did enjoy the last live stream about Washed. It's posted. If you get a chance, go check it out on the Long Boxing While Black YouTube or Blerding While Dad YouTube channel. But it was a good discussion about getting older as a Black person. And so I was really thrilled with it. It did run a little bit long, and I left that raw and uncut. So it is what it is. I want to get back into the live streaming thing. I actually like live streaming better than shooting video. I got to incorporate some gaming things, but there's a lot of things we got to get rid of in the house in order to facilitate a gaming experience that is intriguing, interesting, and something that we can continue on with. So there's a couple of adjustments I'm going to have to make to my setup here. But the reality is the live streaming thing, I'm thinking about playing around with a couple of times and settling on a certain day and time and kind of making that the show. So this, and before I get anybody in the stream, this is what the format is going to be. I'm going to come on. I'm going to have a couple of topics that I want to nail down, and then I'm going to jump into the meat of it. And then if I have any questions, I'll take them all answer, and I'll just kind of have a rapid fire session or any topics of conversation that we want to come up with. So on today's episode of Blerding While Dad, we're going to have a discussion about R. Kelly. And we're going to have a real discussion about my thoughts on R. Kelly. Now, if you know me on social media, if you know me in person, I'm very transparent about what my thoughts are regarding that specific gentleman. And so I'm going to put them out here. They're going to be very unfiltered. And so, if a little bit of objectionable language offends you, then this may not be the segment for you. But that's not all we're going to talk about. I got some other stuff I want to talk about. Marvel's What If, just kind of give my overview of it. I want to talk about the new Bond trailer and the new Bond movie dropping, and hopefully maybe we can discuss a little bit about who you guys' picks are for the next James Bond. And then talk about the Cowboy Bebop trailer. I was late to the party on that one, but I'm here for it. So that's what we're going to do on today's episode. You're going to see me throw to the break. So, and when I throw it to the break, that's more or less for my podcast when I recut it. So we're going to take a pause for the cause, and we'll be right back. All right. So now we're in the intermission, y'all. Before I get this all fired up, let's have a conversation. Who are y'all looking at for the next James Bond? Let's get those comments rolling. And also, and additionally, I want to see what some of your takes are with R. Kelly thing. I really am curious to see how people are perceiving it. I know that I have very strong takes on it, and I'm probably going to piss somebody off that's somewhere out there in it, but that's how it goes. So that's what we're going to do on that. And then, just any other, once we get into the live Q&A, we can kind of discuss some other elements of nerddom and other things that are going on. So we're about to go back to the show. 2, 1. All right. Welcome back. So today's episode, we're going to get in, out, and around the R. Kelly conversation. And I need to do a little bit of prefacing by this. Today is the anniversary of my mom's death, and it's kind of a rough day for me. But I decided, instead of moping around the house and, just kind of being sucked into my grief, I decided I wanted to do something that I've been waiting on and something that had been playing in my mind and something I wanted to establish. And so that's really what this is. I wanted to try out this new show format and get back more into the live streaming side of things, and use that to be the change that I want to, the change I wanted to make in my life to kind of signify a new period of growth for me with my mom's passing. She died in 2016. So it's still kind of raw, still 5 years. But, if you lost a parent, that's a wound that doesn't really ever heal. So That's what this is. So before we get too far into the conversation, let's talk about some of the other things, like the Cowboy Bebop trailer. Dope. Late to the party. I'm gonna check it out. I believe it drops in November on Netflix. I got to go back and check the time, but I love when people take live action versions of properties seriously and give it the kind of love and respect that specific the specific piece needed. And I see it. I see homages to the original episode. I'm missing out on Ed, but we'll see where Ed comes in, because Ed wasn't really. I don't want to misgender Ed, but Ed wasn't in the show until a little bit later on. The new Bond movie's dropping. Excited about that. I'm a Bond nerd, recent Bond nerd. The old Bonds kind of were like, but the recent ones have been dope. Seeing what Daniel Craig does with it, seeing who they set up to be the next Bond. Are we going to have a black woman as Bond? Are we going to have a black man as Bond, which would be dope? I know who my odds-on favorite are. We can discuss that later on. And then Marvel's What If. I'm going to have a deeper conversation about Marvel's What If after we discuss the R. Kelly thing, because I'm going to need to pick me up. I'm at a point now where I think we can kind of dive headlong into the discourse revolving around R. Kelly. And I will talk about a little bit what my experience is. My work experience, is almost 20 years. I think it's over 20 years working with youth and families. And a lot of my kids were sexually abused, were sex trafficked, had horrific abuse in their case files or whatnot. And so I was dealing with a lot of that collateral damage. And so my perspective on R. Kelly is pretty dim. It's not about redemption for him. I don't really care. I want healing for his victims. And I want the people that he harmed to be made whole again. And so when I discuss R. Kelly, Robert, whatever you want to call him, when I discuss him, it's going to be really focused on, it's going to be laser focused on that end of things. I don't really care if, he goes to prison and, finds God or turns over a new leaf or anything. I don't care about that stuff with R. Kelly. The thing I'm interested in is making sure that his victims are made whole. And that's really the long and the short of it. So when I discuss this, I'm going to be pretty direct in my feelings about it. So like I said, if you are sensitive to that, this may not be the stream for you. Here's the reality. Here's my entire history with this R. Kelly bullshit. So, and if you track it, I know millennials and Gen Xers are going to have a very complicated relationship with R. Kelly, because growing up, he was the king of R&B. That was it. Like, he was the level. He dominated for a long time. And he, some of his songs were the backdrop for some of us. For a lot of people, his songs were the backdrop of some of their favorite years and some of their favorite moments. And I think that kind of creates a halo around R. Kelly. I think that creates a real strong halo around him, because people associate his music with the good times in life, getting married, high school dances, falling in love, all that stuff. His music is associated with some of the best times in your life. Here's the danger in that. And it's a danger that, it's not just limited to R. Kelly, but it's not just limited to R. Kelly, but any celebrity or anything that was present at a time where your endorphins were flowing and you were really happy. That's one of those things that can be quietly toxic in your life, that you don't, but you always associate it with the good and positive things. R. Kelly is associated with a lot of people's first dance, is associated with a lot of people's first love, associated with a lot of people's wedding dance and having a good time at a wedding reception. There's a lot of different elements that R. Kelly, his music was kind of the tapestry for. Now, like I said, that's dangerous as shit. Especially when you're evaluating him, because bro slid on that trafficking, or that child pornography charge in the early 2000s. And a lot of it was, in my mind, was based on what his reputation was, because you have a halo around him where R. Kelly was the soundtrack for all this wonderful things that people experience. And invariably, people associate those wonderful things with, important moments in their life, and they let him slide on it. That's the reality. And so it's really easy to fall into that. Here's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to put it out there. I'm about maybe 6 months younger than Aaliyah. So we're giving some perspective to the age of people that were R. Kelly fans when he was really at the peak of his powers. It was us and Gen Xers. We were in there. I stopped messing with dude when I was old enough to know better, which was college, when that tape became public news. And I was old enough to say, wow, that's an underage girl. That's not cool. And I was done with R. Kelly. Now, this was early 2000s. So I was kind of standing alone in my feelings about it. So I've had almost 20 years to kind of really formulate my thoughts on this thing. For a lot of people, this disconnection with R. Kelly is a new thing, because he dropped "Step in the Name of Love." It's one of the Black wedding songs. It's the one that's on a lot of people's list. My wife and I went out to a club in Kansas City where everybody was two-stepping, and that was the music that was playing in the background. Like I said, the challenge with evaluating R. Kelly is a lot of his music was the theme of people's good times, but we got to separate that. We got to cut that out, because if we go back and look at it, and I don't have the full discography in front of me, but I can toss out some examples. You know what? I don't know why she didn't release an uncut interview. Maybe he said something valuable in it. Nostalgia films, that's a great question. I don't know why that came out. There's so many elements to this, and this is what happens when you allow somebody with this much power and this much ability to weave a narrative. You just allow them to be out there, because there's so many elements and there's so many different points in time where we're like, bro, why didn't people say anything? I look at it like this. A lot of people in the industry fucked up deeply when it became a rumor about him and Aaliyah, because that was an insidious enough rumor where even at 14, 15 years old, I was skeeved out by it. I'm like, ugh, this is a grown ass man. I knew better at 14 years old that was not okay, but there's a lot of grown-ups in the industry that were in the music industry that knew exactly what was going on, but they didn't want to turn down the R. Kelly. They didn't want to turn it down. They didn't want to expose it. They didn't want to damage any of their relationships. I got some great comments, so I'm going to start adding those to the feed, y'all. They didn't want to address it. They didn't want to poison the well or whatever. They thought that it could hurt their relationship or hurt their future prospects. And so they let that slide. They let this grown man rape this 14-year-old child. And instead of standing up and saying, wait a minute, this is not okay, I'm divesting myself from dealing with this dude, they let it slide. And she became collateral damage to that piece of it. And it was totally unfair. But this was not a secret, bro. Like, and I think that's the thing that's most infuriating about this. It was not a secret. Like, what was Aaliyah's first album? What was her first album called? Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. Who was the executive producer on that? Who wrote most of the songs on that? It was R. Kelly. On the public announcement joint where, Vibe, he's flirting with like an 11-year-old Aaliyah on that song, bro. And so my thing is, dude was out here saying it with his chest for all these years, and he thought he was untouchable. And, to to sit up there and say age ain't nothing but a number while you're married to a 14-year-old child that you are molesting on a, ugh. That shows somebody who has no concept of or no belief that these laws and norms apply to them. You know, Pete. So I kind of tweeted this out earlier, bro. So if I dropped a mixtape and the mixtape was called People Who Pitch Puppies, People Who Throw Puppies, right? And I dropped a subsequent mixtape called Yeah, You Got Popped with a Puppy. And then I dropped another mixtape like The Puppy Smack Chronicles. You got smacked upside the face with a puppy, volume 2, right? And then you found out that I had an elaborate puppy dodgeball ring where I was using live puppies to play dodgeball with other people. At that point, once you have that common knowledge into your world, would you continue to stream? Because if you're continuing to stream, you're saying, you know what? I don't mind him using puppies to play dodgeball, bro. I'm cool with that. I'm not saying you're justifying it, but I'm saying you're kind of justifying it. No, what I'm saying is, if you know that the money that from those streams and those proceeds from those tapes and whatnot is going towards people who like to throw puppies at people and get hit with puppies, regardless of the damage it does to the puppy, you are kind of giving your endorsement to that individual. That's tough. And I know it's a hard thing to wrap your head around. And a lot of this is hindsight. It's the benefit of hindsight. But you have the option to divest from somebody that is actively harming somebody. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person because you went out and bought the album, you streamed the music or whatnot before you actually had knowledge of it. But once you had knowledge of it, and once they said it with their chest and made an album talking about the horrible things that they were doing to harm people, in my mind, the way my conscience is set up, I'm like, I divest from that. And that's why back in the days, I stopped messing with R. Kelly. I stopped when the original tape dropped. I'm like, oh shit, that's him. I'm done. And in my mind, the only way that I would reinvest back into his brand and music and the whole nine was if there was some kind of, oh no, that was some other dude that looked just like, or some stunt double. But at that point in time, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to participate. I no longer wish to participate in this. And that's one of the hardest things to do, especially when you have a cat like R. Kelly who has a halo around him because people associate his music with a good time. They associate it with the best things that ever happened to them in life. And he was skating by on that. It was wild to see the episode of the Boondocks where they talked about the trial of R. Kelly, and they talked about how we kind of people glossed over the horrible things that he had done, and were really just concerned about the music. And for some people, that's fine. They can divest. They can make that alteration. But I can't make that break. I have a very difficult time. If you are out here in your music talking about the harm that you're doing to other people, and then still doing that harm and then using the dollars to buy new sex dungeons and mansions and hire more staff so that you could continue on harming children, I got a problem with that, bro. And so that's where my mind is with it. I got the same feeling with Bill Cosby, and a lot of people don't like it, but you could take, all right, so this is how I'd be cool with R. Kelly. If you took R. Kelly and said, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to put you on a raft. We're going to give you a half-eaten tuna fish sandwich and an empty plastic bottle. And then we're going to set you adrift in the South Pacific, in the middle of South Pacific. And if you make it to land, wherever you land, you can be free. That's where I would go with it. You can do the same thing for Bill Cosby. Anybody else? And, we like to throw out different names of white dudes that molest kids and whatnot. And my take on that is we don't, Black empowerment is not about, it is not about equal access to harm children. It's not. It's about creating a safe environment where Black children can grow up to be adults that are taken care of and adjusted and valued in the world that they're in. And predators do not make that in safe environment. Predators, sexual predators, are a direct threat to everybody who cannot defend themselves in the community, and they must be exiled. And I don't care that such and such white celebrity did X, Y, and Z in 1964 or 1984 or 2004. I don't care. He can go too. She can go too. All of them can go. I don't have any empathy for that. And I don't think that we can say, well, all the, throughout Mr. Weinstein, Weinstein was doing blah, 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 blah. I fucking do. I don't care. I don't care. like he could go too. A lot of these people, and I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to entertainers who do something egregious on these levels, is it does that halo still affects, that halo still persists, because the reason why that halo still persists is we still associate them with a good time. A lot of Harvey Weinstein's movies and stuff were associated with movies that you enjoyed and whoop-de-woo, this, that, and the third. And so he gets that halo, he gets that protection. Not as much because you don't directly associate his name with the films, but you associate with the production company with the movies, and he had a lot of protection. But he can go too. I don't care. Bill Cosby. A lot of positive memories about Bill Cosby. I was a huge Bill Cosby fan. One of my homies kind of checked me on it back in the days before the allegations before Hannibal Buress kind of reintroduced allegations to the whole world. He kind of checked me on it, and he's talking about, Bill Cosby is wildly anti-Black, bro. Like super. My son just came in. Hey, buddy.
Hi.
How was school? Good. Yeah, go ahead. So one of the, he checked me on it because he's like, Bill Cosby super anti-Black, and I'm like, I don't know. And then I went and listened to some of his stuff, and he was talking about Black millennials and Black Gen Xers like we were the filth of the earth, bro. And I'm like, oh, I ain't got no feelings for Bill Cosby right now, but he can go off and do his own thing and pander to these older folks. That's cool, whatever. But then the allegations rolled down. I'm like, oh, so we don't need Cliff Huxtable no more. And my take on it was we have to separate Bill Cosby from Cliff Huxtable. And I used to tell people that all the time. Cliff Huxtable was, and even in the show, there were some creepy things going on the show, but we'll get back to that later. But Cliff Huxtable was America's dad, and there's a handful of rappers who have played themselves by not disassociating Cliff Huxtable from Bill Cosby. Chuck D and Pete Rock, bro, y'all got to do better. The Chuck D post about R. Kelly was egregious, bro. That was awful. I'll circle back to that one after I finish this thought. But anyway, the entire Bill Cosby thing, we associate him with being Mr. Pudding Pops, Mr. America's Dad, the Cosby Show, the mugging for camera, and all the other stuff that he used to do, and the laughs and being, this role model of Black parenthood and stuff like that, and then becoming the grumpy old man who hates everything young. Okay, whatever. But then the allegations started popping up, bro. And initially I started seeing people saying, well, they're just trying to bring him down, and this is all trumped up and everything. But then you go back and listen to it, and I was a Bill Cosby fan. I'll be honest with you. I had a lot of his old albums on vinyl. There's one called For Adults Only, and it was more adult content. It was more Bill Cosby adult content, right? And it was an old stand-up. This was like 60, 70 years old. He had an entire set about drugging women. It was an entire set. On the Cosby Show, there was an entire set about him putting something special in the barbecue sauce to initiate romantic feelings between Claire and Elvin and Sandra. It was weird, sketchy as hell. So the signs were kind of there when you start connecting the dots. But we associate Bill Cosby with a lot of happy moments of our childhood. I remember the little thing that he used to do on Nickelodeon with the pen and all that other stuff, picture pages and all that other stuff. So it became very difficult to associate him with this negative stuff. But that is that's part of the accountability piece of it. It is, we hold people accountable even when we have a strong attachment to them. That's how accountability works, bro. You can't just allow somebody to be unaccountable for their actions without calling them out. My wife called me out on my bullshit a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to go into the details, but it was something tied to, a mental thing that I had going on, and she called me out on it. Accountability doesn't mean we hate you. You can, if you're a mega R. Kelly fan, you can love his stuff, but you can say, this is my part to hold him accountable, because what he did was not okay. And I think it's one of those things, especially when we go into some of these side conversations regarding Black accountability and stuff like that, and people use that as some kind of anti-Black smear to diminish Black folks or whatnot, and talk about how we need to be more accountable in our communities and whatnot. But you can't say that when you allow paragons in the community to slide on doing real harm to people. Now, it's not about the lust of dragging somebody online, because I do think I've seen where people will drag somebody because it was literally a misplaced comma in the tweet. I've seen it happen. I've seen it spiral out of control like that, and some people literally just wait for the drag. I'm talking about where somebody shows you something egregious and you're like, ooh, I need to divest from this. I don't want to give any kind of tacit consent to this in any way, shape, or form. That's the R. Kelly conversation. At what point do we separate R. Kelly from the guy who sings all the songs that were the soundtrack of our lives? How many years do you wish he gets? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that one. How many years? You know what? I would, I'm posting this one, Nostalgia Films. I want to put it up there. For me, the sheer volume of girls and boys that he assaulted, I don't think him coming out ever again is in the cards. I would, and I have a very dim view of rehabilitation for sex offenders, because, not just sex offenders, but because that's a very broad topic, but people who assault children, people who sexually assault children. We have a very dim view of that. And so I hope they keep him in there for the rest of his life, because one of the things that allows people to, I want to say almost one of the things that allows people to rehabilitate is feeling guilt, understanding what they did was wrong. And at no point in time did I get the sense that this dude feels like he did anything wrong. I just don't. There is no hesitation or compunction about it. When you watch his actions in the public sphere, there was nothing where he expressed any kind of remorse about what he did. And so keep him locked up, because the chances of them rehabilitating a prodigious child predator, and that's what he was, a prodigious child predator, just like Bill Cosby was a serial rapist, a prodigious child predator. Whew, bro, that's a tough one. I don't think he should come out. But I'm not the judge on that one. Let the judge sort that one out. But I don't think there's any number of years that will make that okay. And the reality is, I'll ask, when do you think it's, how do you think? Because in my mind, if they said all of the proceeds from any R. Kelly, we've talked to the victims, all the people who brought lawsuits, and we said, we will pay you the proceeds of any music that he streams from this point forward. We will divert his funds to y'all as restitution. I'd be all for it. Stream it away. Stream away. But he was living on borrowed time since the trial he won. And I think that trial that he won really enabled him in a way where he felt untouchable because of the shit. Like, this bro's walking around. I think the label wants his catalog. Ooh, that's gross too, because now we're taking the catalog, and and now the label gets a hold of it because they probably want to recoup some things. But you take his catalog and put it in the hands of this corporate entity whose job is to maximize profit, regardless of the human impact. That's gross, bro. So, but to go back to the original question, I think, yeah, he is living on borrowed time, and it empowered him and made him feel like he was invincible. Bro started calling himself the Pied Piper of R&B, and wearing a hamburglar mask, bro. And so, and I'm looking at the Pied Piper of R&B. Pied Piper is the one that when you came to town and kidnapped the kids. His music, he played his music, and he took the kids with him. What is that saying, bro? You just got acquitted of, I think it was an acquittal. You just got acquitted of child pornography, and now you are dressing like the Pied Piper and calling yourself the Pied Piper of R&B. You're wilding, bro. And so now you've taken it to another level. And I almost think that he probably doubled down after that point, because he's like, they ain't gonna touch me. I mean, we could get into the nitty gritty of what I'm hearing from people in Chicago, where we're talking about payoffs to the Chicago Police Department to look the other way. And we can get into that, because I can tell you, and this is not, I know somebody's going to say, oh, well, there's anti-police or whatnot, but I can tell you, reporting missing children is a crapshoot in most cities, especially if they're black and brown, because they don't care. Just assume that black kids run away. That's just what it is. Just assume they'll turn up somewhere. And when they turn up dead, then we go, oh my goodness, the cops will go, oh my goodness, this can never happen again in the history of whatever. And then the next day, their same officers are out on the street taking missing person reports or refusing to take missing person reports for black kids. People were on the payroll at the Chicago Police Department and probably in the prosecutor's office. He probably had police running security, off-duty cops running security on some of the pads where he was molesting these kids. And so the corruption goes a mile high. And it's not like some QAnon fantasy BS. It's, he had money. He was a megastar in Chicago. Everybody knew what dude was into. They weren't skeeved out by the fact that he used to be like a ghost haunting those talent shows where little kids were performing. And it was enabled on a lot of different levels. I'm talking about aldermen. I'm talking about cops, talking about a lot of people who have a lot of pull in the system. This was not just an R. Kelly operation. And when they said racketeering charges, bro, that is a higher level where they can actually take other crimes that aren't exactly associated with them and roll them up into the racketeering charge. And that's kind of what they did. That's how they got them out of the paint. But I'm curious to see, what exactly he did exactly what his sister, I can't read today. He did exactly what his sister, my uncle, did to him, isn't it? Yeah, he probably did. And, I know that the narrative that Chuck D was kind of weaving this narrative that R. Kelly was an abused kid. But I'm going to be honest with you. I've worked with hundreds of abused kids who have been horrifically sexually abused. And that isn't always a straight line to them being a sexual predator. That's a choice that R. Kelly decided to make. A lot of the kids say this happened to me and it'll never happen to anybody else again on my watch. And R. Kelly could have been that. He decided to go the other way. Sister probably needs to be locked up too. His uncle needs to be locked up. Everybody who's associated with him needs to be locked up. And I wonder on what the racketeering charges, if they have any real officials. Yeah. I'm wondering if they have any real officials who held official positions in decision-making capacities in these racketeering charges. I want to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. And it is one of the things. Yeah. It's not a straight line. I agree, but it's there. And, the chances of somebody being, molested and without any kind of intervention or any kind of help, being able to avoid that, sometimes it is a very difficult path that these young people do walk. But I don't want to put it out there and stigmatize that population of survivors, because it ends up being a choice, and R. Kelly made his choices, and he has the power. He had the power not to. He had the power not to. If you're growing up in a house and your partners are playing with guns, that's true. But like I said, he had the option not to. He wasn't a victim of fate. At some point, he had to make the decision. This is not okay. And I guess the reason why I say that is because when he got caught with Aaliyah, all the reports said they tried to cover up what was happening when it was obvious to the whole world. If he thought it was okay, if you're talking about somebody who had happened to them and they think it's okay, because I've seen it where you had kids that ended up going on to be predators themselves after being preyed upon. They don't have it. A lot of them don't have that peace in their mind where they don't think it's okay. Like where they don't have a peace in their mind that says, "Hey, stop, this is wrong." And it's in plain sight, and there's no shame or anything associated with it. He got caught and he tried to cover it up. So for me, that shows somebody that knows. I get it. He was a child, and I understand it. And I hope, that it's my wish, and I know it's way gone. That's a foregone conclusion. It's my earnest hope that the people who did it were brought to justice. I don't think they were. But, and it's the toughest narrative because you don't want to blame them for it, but you don't want to say, well, this thing that didn't happen wasn't a signature event, because it absolutely was. And we know it's a transformative experience for a young person when they're growing up. But at the same time, and it's not even a defense. It's just saying he's an adult now. He's got to know better now, and, hurting kids, it's not automatic. It's not a reflex. And about that money. Yeah, he was molested for 7-8 years by his sister. And I get it, man. I'm not saying you're defending him at all. But he had the power. Yeah. I heard his sister was in court while the jury said guilty, guilty, guilty. They need to get her out of the paint too. Throw everybody that was tied up in all of this mess, just throw them, they need to go. I don't care how they go, they got to go. And I got some pretty inventive ways to get them gone, but they got to go too. And that's my entire take on it. At the end of the day, I'm going to, for child R. Kelly, I would have been an advocate to say, we need to intervene. All these people need to be locked up and we need to get him immediate help. For teenage R. Kelly, it would have been the same thing. But when you become that adult and you got that money and that power to do whatever you want to, and that's the route you choose, now you've made your own decision. And now whatever consequences, whatever happens to you. But you think if he snitches, he gets free? I don't know. I think right now R. Kelly is kind of the sacrificial lamb for Chicago because they can throw him on the barbecue, because he has all these other charges and all, he got charged in New York. But he has all these other charges pending. They can kind of get him out of the paint and not implicate themselves if they cover it up for him. So he could snitch to whoever he wants to, as long as the DA is not willing to listen to it. It's kind of a closed case, because here's the reality, and this is what I fear. I mentioned this before. A lot of people played a role in this thing. There are cops that are tied up in it probably. They probably got money. There are politicians that are tied up and they got money. There are, politicians / legal people. If you hire your county attorney or public defender and stuff like that, or if you hire those people, they're tied up in it. So a lot of money exchanged hands to facilitate all this. It didn't just happen out of the blue. And so him snitching, I think we might get a couple more people, but at some point they're going to say, yeah, you know what? That's nice and all, Robert, but it's time for you to go back in the cell, and they'll put him back in there, because once it starts getting close to home and you see exactly the play, the institutions that were in place. It's going to look very bad for a lot of these metropolitan police departments, wherever he was. I know New York, Chicago, Atlanta, wherever he was. I don't know if he was down in Florida or whatnot, but wherever he was, it looks bad for these police departments because they look the other way. That's what it is, man. I guess my feelings on, I want to say they're complicated, but they're really not. Straightforward. Fuck him. I mean, that's about as honest as I can be about it, because he hurt so many kids in this pathway, and hurt so many people that have to now live with the humiliation and even some of the diseases, things that he infected them with, and the physical trauma that he inflicted upon them. That at some point, it just becomes a monstrous kind of thing, and he's got to go. So he's got to go. The unfortunate side of it is, with that comes the catalog of music, which in my estimation has got to go too. But people are going to stream it regardless. If the label buys it, it's going to be insidious because, and here's what I think. Here, I'm going to be honest with you. I think even the label acquiring the masters, and I think he owns a lot of his own publishing, but I think the label acquiring the masters, I don't know if they're going to be able to profit off that, man, because bro's kind of a pariah right now, man. I know the value of the Cosby catalog probably took a big hit when Bill Cosby went up, bro, because what network is going to want to play that? What radio system is going to want to play that? Because you're going to get so many people, and the thing about it is, most of the people that are kind of in that complicit mode, they're not going to call and say anything. The people they're going to get calls from are the people that are kind of like me, where they're like, man, I don't want to hear this dude. Why are y'all playing him? And while we may be a smaller number, maybe, I don't know, we're going to be the most vocal about it. And we're going to create the most static for anybody, any radio system, or any place where they're streaming his music. So I don't know how profitable that catalog is going to be. We'll see. We'll see what happens with him. But in my mind, throw him on the junk heap, bro. And I know that they talked about, well, that's Robert versus R. Kelly. Robert did that, man. Robert was this. And Robert, R. Kelly, y'all can hold hands while you sit in the chair and they hit the switch. Peace. So I feel about it. I wish the same for the other people that were involved with harming him as a child. But, it is what it is. So, R. Kelly discussion. And it's not an easy topic. It's not an easy discussion to have, because we could go into a larger conversation about how, especially in the Black community, we do have a lot of paragons in our community that are caught up in some insidious kind of shit, some gross things, bro. And the accountability piece means stripping away some of their power and some of their mystique. Now, there's documented cases, the entire Quorum Troll, the J. Edgar Hoover letters to Martin Luther King, trying to get him to kill himself and things along those lines. There are substantiated, efforts to bring people down, but that ain't R. Kelly, bro. It's not Bill Cosby or R. Kelly. So it is a balancing act, because with our Black celebrities and Black paragons, sometimes we do end up looking the other way. And who's really benefiting from that? Because they're allowed to continue to harm unchecked. They hurt more people, and then they dig themselves into a deeper hole for when they do finally get caught and somebody does finally hold them accountable. And now they've hurt more people, and they've gone a lot further than they would have been able to go without intervention. Somebody has stepped in and stopped them in the first place. So that's the challenge. But as far as R. Kelly goes, like I said, my energy's kind of the same, bro. I was done with dude after the first tape dropped. And like I said, I ain't messed with dude since I was old enough to know better. I'm I'm saddened that the people in the industry who saw him and Aaliyah didn't intervene. Because if they would have intervened back then, think about what had happened if there was a massive public outcry. And this is probably the last part I'm going to get into about it. What if there was a massive public outcry when the R. Kelly, Aaliyah married rumor started, and we didn't treat this like this was a cutesy thing? I remember seeing on Video Soul, they asked him, and they kind of waved it off and laughed it off. She's 14 years old. What if there's a massive public outcry back then? How many victims could have possibly been saved? Now, I don't know if the court system would have found him, if the court system would have done anything to him. But, we don't know. I know he didn't have the level of influence or power or money at that point in time in his life. And so there may have been a straighter line to hold him accountable for his actions. But if somebody intervened when this started in the public eye with this Aaliyah shit, and they didn't treat it like it was a cutesy love story as opposed to a creepy old man molesting a 14-year-old girl who didn't know any better, maybe they could have saved Robert. Maybe they could have saved a lot of young men and women who fell victim to him. And I think a lot of this, he paid everybody off. It said his mother called the cops on his play uncle, and then that play uncle bribed his mom. This is exactly why the pedophilia family, and that's the problem with it, where that kind of behavior is normalized. It's a tough cycle to break. And like I said, the only thing I counter with is not everybody who grows up in that environment does the same things. It's a hard cycle to break, though, and I agree with you 100%. But I'm telling you from experience, and I'm not going to disclose the cases and stuff, the individual cases, but I've actually worked those kind of cases, and it's a tough cycle to break, but it's possible. And I wish, somebody would have intervened when he was a kid to prevent all this. But, now when he gets older, I wish somebody would have intervened on Aaliyah's behalf, and it's a shout out to whoever's out there who has a potential R. Kelly in their circle. Intervene often. Intervene loudly and often. And if people are shushing you and telling you it's not okay, do what you can. So at least that you did everything that you have in your power to save this kid from this dark road, because the last thing you want to do is create another monster like R. Kelly. Yeah, his mama ain't shit. I mean, that's the bottom line of the bottom line is play uncle ain't shit. None of these people are shit. Paid everybody off. Yeah. I mean, and I think that part of it is, since there's no early intervention, and I'm going back to the Leah thing, if there's no early intervention, somebody steps in early and says, this dude has to go to jail, bro. This is not okay. We're coming to arrest you. We're taking you away. You're going to do some time. It damages his career and hurts his earning potential. Labels disassociate themselves with him, and he has to go back on that road to try to rebuild his reputation. But now he has that mark of somebody who's a sexual predator. I don't know. It's wishful thinking, but that's kind of how I see it. You think he didn't watch for IDs after his trial? I don't know, man. I don't know. I think dude was wild. After that first trial, I think he was assured of his powers, and he thought he can get away with anything. I think so. The latest some years when I started. Yeah. That's why they're charging them all. Yeah. I guess, in hindsight, it's always 2020, and that's what the benefit of being able to review this in the past was. I'm telling people what they should have done. But at the same time, I do realize how messy the situation was. I'm just saying, if somebody would have taken action, there are various stages in this man's life where somebody responsible could have taken action and saved a lot of people, a lot of pain, and a lot of agony, and a lot of hurt, and a lot of scars that they got to live with for the rest of his life, R. Kelly included. But he could live those scars off in a prison, away from society, tucked away from society. He's got to deal with what he did. And that's the reality of it. So, like I said, those are my thoughts on the R. Kelly thing. You know, I'm disappointed. So I wanted to talk about, I'm disappointed, Chuck D is my boy. I love Chuck D. Chuck D be out here on these social media streets saying some of the stupidest shit. I guess my problem with Chuck D was when he made his statement, I'm not going to post it on here. But basically he did the entire, and he laid it out. He laid it out what happened to R. Kelly in the past and all that other stuff. But I do think that when we have the conversations around him, we need to lead with the harm he did to the people, to his victims. I think that's the thing we need to lead with. And once we lead with that, if you have any empathy left in your heart after you hear what he did to his victims, if you have any empathy for him left in your heart, then we could talk about his redemption story. But Chuck D sometimes has a penchant for putting his foot in his mouth. I know Pete Rock took that L regarding Bill Cosby a couple of years ago. That was ugly. It's interesting to watch It's interesting to watch specifically Black celebrities who feel sorry for R. Kelly, but won't say anything about his victims first. It's kind of, like I said, man, I talk about divesting from my favorite celebrities, man. When I was growing up, my idol was Russell Simmons. That's who I wanted to be. And then a couple years ago, I saw the horrible shit Russell Simmons is tied up into, and I ain't messed with Russell since. And I'm kind of low-key ashamed to admit that when I was growing up, he was the level. He's what I wanted to be by the time I was 30. But Russell Simmons, man, he might be the next one to get up out the paint, bro. He's living off the grid now. I mean, every time I see him, he's in some tropical oasis shooting videos, meditating, cross-legged, and every couple months I see some new accuser come forward on Russell. So, it's hard to watch your idols growing up. And I think KRS-One had the same crisis when it came to African Bambaataa. He landed on the wrong side of it, though, man. All intents and purposes, African Bambaataa is a monster, dude. The Zulu Nation even divested from him. But KRS-One is sitting out here looking crazy, trying to defend African Bambaataa. And it's like, bro, you need to let that one slide, man. I don't care if he called it a favor or not. That is not the move for anybody at all. So I'm saying all that to say this. When the next one comes out, the next one's coming out. When the next major celebrity gets caught up in being a horrific monster, I think, the R. Kelly trial, Bill Cosby trial, other stuff kind of has given us a blueprint to conceptualize this and talk about it in a term that centers the victims as opposed to centering the monster themselves. We need to center the victims and the harm that was delivered upon them, as opposed to centering the feelings of the person involved in it. And like I said, R. Kelly was a man-made monster. Nobody checked him. They should have checked him. They had checked him a long time ago. If they'd have checked his sister and uncle, what could have been. We might have had R. Kelly without all the bullshit, without all the diabolical shit that he was was financing. But it is what it is. So that's all I got for the R. Kelly one. So if y'all like this format, let me know. I'm enjoying it. Thanks for Nostalgia Films for popping on. You helped a lot with this conversation. I know I have another comment here. Never been an R fan. I can't see who you are, but shout out to you from Facebook. But like I said, it is what it is. It's a sad case, but it's a sad commentary in the world we live in. And it's very difficult to hold people who have a lot of power accountable in this country, historically and worldwide. But there shouldn't have been no excuse for R. Kelly to get as far along as he did, and it required corruption of a lot of other people. So that's what I got. I discussed my Cowboy Bebop, so I'll probably be having a stream breaking that down because I'm gonna be watching the live action version of Cowboy Bebop. Marvel What If. Excited about it. I normally watch the episodes on Wednesday or Thursday, so I haven't seen if the new one's dropped. I ain't seen it yet. I'm not aware if it has dropped. I'm interested. So far, the series is hit for me. I wasn't a huge fan of the Marvel Zombies flip. It was kind of... That's because I wasn't a huge fan of the Marvel Zombies comic book. But the What If stories are dope. I'll be honest with you. I used to collect it when I was growing up. The What If stories are pretty much standard depressing as hell. Bleak, dark, bleak stories. And so I know a lot of people were talking about the bleak nature of the What If stories. That is a function that comes from the comic books. The comic books were dark. I remember the one that stood out the most to me was What If Death's Head 1 had lived? One of the most jacked up stories I've ever read in my life. And I'm talking about of all mediums. It was bleak. I'm talking about, when I say bleak and jarring, because I bought that in like 1991, 92. I'm talking about Transformers, the original Transformers animated movie level of bleak. Like, Transformers animated movie was like Hamburger Hill for kids. It was being like 10 years old, or being not 10 years old, being like 5 or 6 in the theaters watching that and watching Optimus Prime get a big hole blown through him and Brawn get his head blown off. It was that level of shocking and jarring. The What If books were dark, and there are a few that were mixed in there. They were funny and humorous, but even the ones that looked humorous at the beginning had some really super dark twist in them. And so the show is kind of mimicking that. I do like the most recent one was the Party Thor. And if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen What If yet, click off here. I'll talk to y'all later. If y'all gone, all right, they gone. So the latest episode, the most recent episode I've seen was the one with What If Thor was only child, and he was Mr. Party, and it was dope and it was funny, and it wasn't exactly amazingly action and gritty and stuff, but it was humorous and it told a good story. And then the end was wild, and I think the end one leads into the next batches of What Ifs revolving around Ultron. And I'm really excited to see what the Ultron one looks like. I'm having a feeling that it's probably pretty dark in and of itself too, because the other ones have been, whew. So I want to see what they do with the What If universe. I think that the Loki series created a very unique opportunity for them to tell a lot of new stories, but it also gave them an ability to bring back different actors as familiar characters. Say bring back a Tony Stark from another universe. They can easily do that. I'm not a huge fan of the concept of recasting Chadwick as Black Panther. I think they could do a Shuri. They can do a Shuri movie and do numbers with it. But if they truly wanted to reboot the whole franchise, they have an avenue to do that with the What If stories, because they could say it's a T'Challa from a different universe. So, and that's why he even looks different. They could easily do that with the What If stories, and I like the idea that when they killed Kang, I don't think it was Kang, to be honest with you. I don't think that they faced Kang yet. I think they faced his variant. I think but I don't think they faced him yet. Nathaniel, I think it's Nathaniel Richards. I don't think they faced the real Nathaniel. I think they faced the heroic Nathaniel Richards and not the evil one that ends up becoming Immortus and Kang. And who else am I missing? Scarlet Centurion. No, that was Ultron. Immortus, Kang. I'm trying to remember what his other one was. Anyway, I'm rambling here. So I think that they can do some really interesting stuff with future Marvel movies. I think they can introduce other characters that have been shown in other films and recast them with saying they're from a different timeline and things like that. I don't want them to get too caught up in the timeline thing, because it almost becomes a cop-out where death doesn't matter. And I think they kind of they flirted with it in the new X-Men books, but they kind of made it matter again. Because we don't want to lose the gravitas of Scarlett Johansson or the Black Widow dying in end game. We just don't. We don't want to lose the impact of a Tony Stark dying. So anyway, that's all I got, y'all. Let me know if you like this concept. Leave a thumbs up. And I will holler at y'all later. Thanks for staying with me for this session. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.